like to introduce you to Eddie Bergman. Eddie is the owner of the E&E Grill in the Theater District, actually right across the street from the Book of Mormon, as well as Hill and Bay in Murray Hill, a restaurant that I had the pleasure of eating at yesterday. So Eddie is a good friend of mine, and he's here today to tell you his experiences in the restaurant business.
All right. Thank you,
Sure.
Professor Leibowitz. All right, so I think I'm gonna probably surprise you in my background on who I am and why I'm in this business, because I have a business partner in the restaurant business, and you know, when you show this stuff with Danny Meyer and you show this food and you get into the scones, that's what excites him. However, a lot of people go into this business and they forget about everything else. You need the passion. Don't go in the business unless you're passionate about food, of course. You know, you've got to be passionate about it. But there's a lot else that goes along with this business. And I think that this is one of the reasons that we have 80% failures oftentimes in the restaurant business, because we forget all the different things that go into the restaurant business. So I'm going to talk about that today. I'm probably going to not talk about the culinary and the exciting part of the business. So I'll leave that to all your imaginations, and I'm sure all of you like food and there's things that excite you, and that's actually what my business partner does. I also want to take the opportunity to talk about, I guess the lesson today. I found that very interesting on people and on management, and I picked some notes, and I'll talk about that because there's no industry that applies to more so than the restaurant business. We heard Professor Leibowitz mention that you went to a restaurant the other day. I hope it wasn't Hill and Bay, that you couldn't understand why the server was not friendly. And I'll tell you why they're not friendly, and I'll go over that. And I'll tell you the challenges of running a business when your frontline sales force, most of the time, in most environments, just don't get it. They don't care. Why don't they care? Why are they there? What's wrong? What's wrong with the picture? And all of this reflects on why you have an 80% failure rate in this business. So we'll talk about that too. And then I also want to give you a little bit about my background, which is not in the restaurant business, and I think it might be applicable to this course. And without going off I don't want to go off target too much. I know the focus is restaurants, so I promise to focus on that, but I'll give you a little bit about my own background and some of the other things that I work on. So I just like a time check, just so I know how much time I've got.
Take as much time as you want. You have about 20-25 minutes.
Okay, so 20-25 minutes. So let me first give a very brief background of who I am. So my name is Eddie Bergman. I am here particularly to speak about the E&E Hospitality Group. And we own 2 restaurants, and we have a management company where we manage both these restaurants as a corporate entity, as a corporate business. So we'll talk about that. My other background is for 15 years I've been working in the nonprofit world. My background is actually when I was much further than that. So growing up, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always sort of had this entrepreneurial interest, like everyone in this class. When I was 12 years old, I started a DJ company on Long Island. When I went to college in 1999, we were doing 300 events on Suffolk County and Long Island, and I sold the business. And I did so because most of our events were on Long Island and Suffolk County, and I had a hard time focusing on college and going out and doing these events every night. I had 4 different setups for the company, and I would have all my brother's older friends that were driving me around, and they worked, I couldn't drive, and they were, I had all these different people that I employed that were basically, and I was running the business aspect. I wasn't the best DJ in the world. I liked music. I didn't really, I wasn't really good at emceeing parties. I had some experience. I had a really hard time. I remember when I was about 14, I did my first Sweet 16 party, and they wanted me to make an announcement that the buffet is open, and I was so nervous to do so. I took the microphone, I hid under the podium, I said, "Ladies and gentlemen," I was so nervous, But that experience basically taught me how to get out in front of people, and I continue today, like we all continue when you get in front of a group of people. It's not easy, and you got to get momentum, and for me, it sort of excites me. But definitely, that was the foundation of my sort of business experience, but also people experience, because I had 4 different setups with my DJ enterprise, and people didn't show up to work. I had DJs that just didn't show up to pick up their equipment, and at the end of the day, it all reflected on me. It reflected on our brand, and at the end of the day, we had to fix the problem, because once you screw up someone's wedding, hopefully it's only one wedding, right? Once you screw up somebody's, experience, there's only one opportunity to get it right. So it was a high pressure business, and that actually translated to the restaurant business. You really only have one opportunity. And if you screw it up, you got to figure out how to recreate it. And it's not easy. Some people are very, very difficult. Some people are forgiving. But some people recognize that if you make an effort, then at least that's enough. So we'll talk about that too. So from the DJ business, I studied hotel and tourism management. I went to NYU and then did a graduate program in social entrepreneurship. So while I started my undergrad program, I got involved in a lot of community service work. And I sort of, while I was DJing, I'd be making a lot of money. I actually made more money DJing when I was in high school than I did even today, which is crazy. And that was like, over 15 years ago. So that DJ business is a good business. So I got involved in doing a lot of community service work. I actually started a nonprofit foundation in 2000. It's called MCW Global. I don't really have all that much time today, so I'm not going to go into it. But essentially, we have it's been around for 15 years. We have programs in 4 different countries in Africa, in Rwanda, Tanzania, Sierra Leone, and Zambia. We build youth community centers as centers for entrepreneurship excellence and vocational training. Similarly, doing what we do in this class, I'm assuming, but abroad. We also run summer leadership programs for young leaders from all over the world, from Africa, the Middle East, from the United States, from diverse backgrounds, focusing on social entrepreneurship, where we help to educate young leaders, particularly between the age of 16 to 20, on social entrepreneurship and helping them start social enterprises. So what is a social entrepreneurship? Essentially, it's taking the principles of entrepreneurship, but applying them to solving some of the world's big challenges. And engage, whether it's using nonprofit organizations as a vehicle, whether it's working in government, or whether it's bringing all the sectors together. So applying business in the nonprofit world. So at the end of the day, your motives going into your startup venture, of course, it's mission driven. So it's to make the world a better place in some way, but using business skills and using entrepreneurship to achieve that. So we see in the world there's so many challenges to address, and oftentimes when those who are addressing the problems, they look through them through one lens. And oftentimes that's why we're not able to fix them. So social entrepreneurship is about bringing all the different sectors together. So again, I'm not here to talk about that, I'm here to talk about the restaurant business. So from there, for the last 9 years, using my background in tourism, which is the world's largest industry, I've been running an organization also while concurrently doing all this other stuff called the Africa Travel Association. It's an organization that's been around for 40 years. I took it over 9 years ago, and we represent the African governments, the ministries of tourism and tourism boards. Those are the government entities responsible for tourism marketing, for helping to promote their country's tourism products. And we also work with the airlines, hotels, travel agencies, tour operators to promote tourism. So this is what I was doing for 9 years. I've traveled all over Africa, and about, I think it was 6 years ago, or almost 6 years ago, 5 years ago when I got married, I decided that I was traveling, like literally I was going every month to Africa. And it was quite difficult to do that. So I wanted to be grounded. I also felt that the work I was doing through the tourism marketing, it was very macro. It's hard to measure because we're working with countries to help them build their brands. So I wanted to do something that was a little bit easier to measure. So at the end of the day, I'm able to say, like, this is what happened today. So I didn't give up the Africa Travel Association. One of my challenges is I have a hard time giving things up. And I end up just taking on a lot. So I'm in the process of thinking this through because right now it's tough to juggle everything. But and I continue to do the Tourism Association. But I met someone in my work in Africa. I realized that you go to a lot of the big hotels in various. Anyone know? First of all, I don't want to. This isn't a sort of an Africa travel course, but just to mention, Africa has 54 countries. It's one of the richest continents in the world with respect to natural resources, some of the friendliest people in the world, some of the most exciting things going on. 7 out of the 10 fastest growing economies are on the African continent. But of course, when we think of Africa around the world, we think of AIDS, poverty, hunger, starvation, war, terrorism, blah, 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 the whole list. And what we do with our association is we try to change that perception. So that's just to mention that. So when I talk about that work, that's basically what we focus on. But I'll mention one of the things that I started focusing on is helping to build a culture of culinary tourism. Because when you go to many countries in Africa, you go to the main hotels and you're not eating the local foods. You're eating foods that are being flowing in because there's a perception of this is what the tourists want. The local food is fresh. There is no frozen food in Africa. Fresh, 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 fresh. The ingredients are incredible. The ingredients are diverse. So what we started doing is launching a campaign to encourage African hoteliers, encourage African governments to provide incentive to help build culinary tourism products within their tourism offerings. So that way, when you go to Africa, you're not only going to visit the big five, the animals, but you're going also for people, for culture and food. Everyone loves food, right? We saw that at the presentation. Everyone was like, who doesn't like pizza, right? Mm-hmm. So everyone loves food. So food is a great way of building up a tourism product. So I met a guy who was from Senegal, who had a restaurant, actually in Brooklyn. The restaurant's no longer around, but it was called Le Grand Dakar, and his name was Chef Pierre. He became a good friend of mine, and we were talking about opening up an African restaurant in New York. And I got excited by this. I said, this is really a fascinating, this would be great because I can do this while I do everything else. I'm not going to give anything else up, but this would be an enterprise where you have 4 walls. Every day you can measure your success by how much of whatever we sell, and we can build up a business. And that's what excited me. And on the food aspect, Africa, that cuisine, it was like I felt I had a little bit of background in this. So Pierre and I started talking, we met, and I realized that he was and he is an incredible chef. He's actually been all over TV and has done all sorts of things on TV, and he's been written, published a book, he's done this, and it would be a great partner to launch an Africa restaurant with. So I started to look at venues, and I had lunch with a guy who was a longtime mentor of mine, he's a lawyer, and at the end of the lunch, literally on the way out, he asked me, because the lunch was about sort of what I was looking to do, and he just sort of catch up with a mentor. And on the way out, we sat there for an hour and a half, didn't even mention this, on the way up and out, I said, by the way, Bob, I'm thinking of opening a restaurant. He's like, what? He's like, well, I got the perfect person for you to meet. So Bob said, you got to come. So Bob emailed me. He set up a meeting for me and Eric, my business partner. Eric is a guy who's been in the business he's in his 40s, but he's been in the business for about 20 years. He went to culinary school, passionate about food. He worked for Chipotle for 3 years doing marketing, but he wanted to do his own business. And his background was more in quick service, not so much in fine dining. So I met Eric, and Eric offered me his services as a consultant. And I said to Eric, I don't want you as a consultant, I want you as a business partner. Well, he said, well, I have my idea, I want to do a steak concept and blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, I'm a vegetarian, whatever, steak, let's go into business together. So we just basically, this isn't really like the typical way things happen, but my belief is that success is where opportunity meets preparedness, and at some point you have to be ready to jump in the ship, jump out of the boat without your life jacket on, a little bit. Don't do it too much, you're crazy. But there's times in life that you have to know when those opportunities present themselves, and you got to be ready to do that. And I sort of did that with Eric. We looked at one location. The location was on 49th between Broadway and 8th. It was a brand new hotel. It was when the economy wasn't doing so great. So this hotel was a boutique hotel that it was just about to open up with just under 100 rooms. A very sophisticated, nice, brand new boutique hotel. And they didn't want to be in the restaurant business. Like many hotels these days, because the restaurant business is tough, and a lot of hotels lose money on their restaurants. So a lot of hotels now are trying to subcontract their restaurants out, and they can just get a check every month for the rent, and then the third party takes care of it. So I thought this was exciting for multiple reasons. Number one, my long-term goal in life was to open a hotel, and I was like, this would give a great opportunity to actually get in the hotel business, because now we're doing the F&B for the hotel. Number two, the restaurant was located directly across the street from the Eugene O'Neill Theater where Fella was playing. Fella had just won all these awards on Broadway. It was a show about Nigeria and about a hero from Nigeria, and it was like the Africa show. And I was like, this thing is going to be around forever. We literally jumped, we signed a lease, we didn't look at any other space, and we signed this lease. And here we go. A month later, Fella leaves Broadway. Some Mormon show's coming to town. Right? So F something CK. So what are we gonna do? Like we got a space that's bricks and mortar. We had to build a restaurant. We just agreed to do this. We didn't really know what we got into. We had to find architects. We had to find kitchen designers. We had to find this person. Before we know it, the small budget that we had raised to open this restaurant had gone 10 times higher. And we hadn't even gotten started. And we realized, what are we doing? It took 9 months to do the construction. Every month we did the construction, we were losing rent. We were paying rent. Our rent deal that we negotiated was terrible. Why was it terrible? Because we had no experience in building restaurants. So the landlord basically took a risk with us, saying, we just invested $30+ million building a 100-room boutique hotel. We're going to give the restaurant to this group. Why? Because the economy is not so good. They sound like, they seem like nice people, but, they're going to build out the space. This is probably what they were thinking. Let them build the space out and let's see what happens. And our rent terms were not good at all. We opened the doors and we focused 9 months of energy on the construction, forgetting about the menu. We forgot about the concept. We forgot about what are we going to do when we open. We thought we're right across the street from what now is becoming what we noticed over time. Like, wow, look at this Mormon show, the Book of Mormon. Like, there are lines, hundreds of people sitting outside. We're going to open our doors and they're all going to come in. This is Times Square. What did we forget? Number one assumption, never make assumptions. In Times Square, you can hand out $100 bills to people, and most people will walk by and they won't take them. Try it. You'll be shocked. Everybody is selling something to everybody in Times Square, the most competitive area. There's so much competition. So we opened the doors, and nobody came. Our first manager that we hired to run the show for us had never worked a day in his life in the restaurant business. The first time we got a booking was a group who came to Book of Mormon who booked a big group of 40 with us, and the group came in, they sat down, they came from Great Neck, high expectations, and the food never came out and they went to the show. It was a disaster. Fortunately, we had a chef that where we realized that the Africa concept wasn't going to work. So we hired a chef, and the chef was so talented. The chef worked so hard. The chef didn't delegate. The chef did everything himself, but the food was good. And that's where we were able to sort of ride the waves for at least we had a little time to figure this whole thing out. The food was good. We eventually lost the chef for multiple reasons, but one of them is that we just didn't know what we were doing, and he probably got frustrated with us, but the food was really good. And that's what saved us. The food, if you were lucky to get your food on time, it was good. Now think about it. In the theater district, right? Your restaurant fills up before the shows. We have 120 seats. Everybody wants to come in at the same time. Everyone wants to be out at the same time. You know, we didn't realize that. We didn't even build our kitchen to accommodate that. All these things that, why restaurants fail, because you go in with a passion, but you don't think about all of the details over and over and over. Fortunately, we were able to maintain success because we were adaptable. Immediately, me and my business partner have a great relationship. He has no ego whatsoever, and I love focusing on the details and just going sort of nuts with the details. And we worked very well together, and we were able to adapt, make changes. We embraced the Broadway community. We took everything we did, and actually I have a collection for the last, my family, the last 15 years when we've been going to Broadway shows, and we've been collecting Broadway posters and hanging them in our house, and we brought them into the restaurant. And all of a sudden, the theaters themselves and the actors, when they came in, they brought their posters too. And it became like the Broadway hotspot. My business partner is a personable person. He likes to build relationships with people. He started spending time in the restaurant, talking to the customers. We embraced Broadway. We became the place that this is your sort of local restaurant in the Broadway theater with, it's priced modestly, but the food will blow you out of the park for the price, and you're going to get friendly service. And that was a culture that we created through my partner Eric, and he's a friendly person. And then I was worried about all the details behind the scenes on how to make all this stuff work out. So he was like the face, and he was the personality. I'm behind the scenes. And we rode this along, and we adjusted, and we made a lot of changes over time, and until we realized that all the ideas that we can come up with, it took us 9 months to agree upon a name, to come up with a logo. None of that stuff matters, from my perspective. Now I'm telling you from my perspective. Danny Meyer, other folks it matters to other people. From my perspective, it don't matter. What matters is the team you put together and being able to execute. Why is that? Because you get, as I said, 120 seats. If you can find a way to fill those seats, because you're going to build a reputation for providing great food, reasonable price, and amazing service, people will come. They're not going to come simply for your location. Location is critical. Location is always number one, right? Especially with any retail business. You must have a good location. However, you can have a good location and still screw it up, right? So from my perspective, location goes hand in hand with the ability to execute. So when it comes to the food and beverage industry, there's 4 things that I just wrote down here that I just want to really sort of share that I feel is critical that you have to always think about when you're executing your food and beverage empire. Number 1 is the food. The food's got to be good, right? You got to be able to produce the food. You got to be able to get it out on time. It's got to be good. It's got to be, the food costs. You can create a lot of great food, and we've seen this with some of our chefs, but the food cost is outrageous. So it's like, that doesn't make sense. So there's a fine balance there, and a lot of creative people are going to, when you take the expensive things away from the chef, they're going to go, oh, my food. They're artists you're dealing with, right? Artists are great people, but artists and business people are oftentimes different. They think differently. So again, this comes to your the whole philosophy of building your team. So you've got your food, you've got your service. Service critical. Number one, service is so important because service, from my perspective, when I go to a restaurant, if the service is good, I don't even pay attention to the food. You know what I mean? If the food is great, I'll walk out for bad service. I won't even give them a chance. And that's what I think people, for the most part, for the mass, that's what I think people pay attention to. Ambiance, very important. Ambiance is something that takes time to think through. We jumped in, we rushed a little bit, so we didn't really have time to think through the ambiance. So we were doing the ambiance post-creating, and we're still doing it now. We're still debating, this curtain doesn't really work. You know what I mean? So it takes time. Some folks will go into a business, and I would imagine if you open a restaurant, you should really think through your ambiance up front, because you really have only one shot. In Times Square, you have more than one shot to make it right, because you get a lot of tourists, and the tourists come in, and if you screw up, hey, they're going back to their countries anyway, and you'll get the next tourist. Eventually it'll catch up to you because they write reviews online, and online reviews will kill you in a touristic area. So important. We actually get a report. We have a manager in our group that's responsible every week for going online and finding out what people are saying about us. They send the report out to all the management team, front of house, back of house. It goes to investors, everyone, and it summarizes what the customers are saying online. So critical. And you know what? The people that write on Yelp, forget about them. The other reviews, and Yelp also to some extent, because Yelp, you have to realize that most people are going to go to Yelp if they're upset. You're not going to get a lot of happy people going on Yelp. But you still upset them, and you still did something wrong. And even if you were right, you're still wrong, right? Why is that? Because in the customer service business, the customer is always right. Unfortunately, that's the way it is, right? So it's a tough business to find people who are willing to get beat up night after night by the customer being wrong but right, because they have to come back with a smile. So it's a very hard business, and it's a hard business to find people that to work in this business, because it's a long hours. You really have to. You have to, this business isn't for everyone, right? So it's really hard to retain talent, hard to find people. So what we found is that we've been through so many chefs with this pedigree, this school, and this long resume, this and that, all this stuff. The best people that we have are people that are from within. Our general manager at E&E Grill House is 24 years old, and she worked for us as a server for 3 years. Prior to that, she worked at Applebee's for 6 years as a server. She is the most valuable player on our team. The most valuable player. Incredible. You can't recruit that talent. Impossible. So that's the type of talent that you have to nurture. Now, how do you get there? It's a whole long ride in between, and we can talk more about that. So ambiance, and also finally marketing. So you got food, service, ambiance, and marketing. So critical. Of course, then there's all the business operations behind the scenes. You got your finance, you've got your legal. You have to make sure it's like anything. You're negotiating your lease is basically the Bible that you're going to be following. That's going to basically dictate the terms of your establishment, or your physical presence as a business. So your lease is so important. A lot of people just sign leases. They don't know what's in there. Landlords, particularly in New York, are very aggressive because they can be. Well, be a little aggressive back when you're signing your lease, because this is the terms that you're going to have to live by. Eventually, the relationship doesn't matter. We've been so good. We have such a good relationship with our landlord, the hotel, that they've realized that we're valuable to what they're doing. So they actually agreed to a permanent rent reduction 3 years out. That was sort of like, that was because we take care of their hotel customers, and we built up the relationship. First, when we went in there, our relationship was, here's a 100-page lease, which basically said that they can do everything and we have nothing on our end, and you go out and you raise $1 million+ and put it into their infrastructure, and what we want, you get out. That was almost the terms. And we had, as a first-time restaurateurs, it was an opportunity for us. So we sort of had to accept it, although we were able to get a few things in there. 3-4 years down the road, permanent rent reduction, friendliness, they're promoting us. Every one of the guests going in their room, they're promoting them. They're proud to be working with us. We do their room service, we take care of their guests, la 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 la. So again, it takes time to build these relationships. So sometimes you have to go into relationships that are purely business, purely legal, etc., etc. You got to be at the bottom of them, and someone's going to be at the top if you're just getting started. And then you got to invest time, and you have to invest energy in building those resources. And it's only your credibility that you have to stand on. So you've got to do things right. So food, service, ambiance, and marketing. So, when it comes to some of the thoughts that were shared on the screen today, I just took a couple notes. So, it's not easy to manage people. It's not easy. You can hear all these folks that are talking about their experiences. I can tell you my experience. You can tell you their experience. I personally don't believe there's no right way or wrong way of doing it. Right? It's tough because everyone's got different personalities. Every situation is different. So it's very, very tough. But for me, it's almost about walking on a balance beam, or like on a tightrope. Because if you go too far this way, you're gonna fall. You go too far that way, you're gonna fall. The way I always do things, if my team is so happy and having a good time, I'm down. If my team is down, I'm up. I gotta always be the opposite. That's my own personal philosophy. Why is that? Because from my perspective, everyone's just having too much fun. Someone's gotta be the worrier. You know what I mean? If they're too far down, someone's gotta bring them up because they're just gonna jump off and leave you. So that's my personal philosophy on how I do things. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying that it's very, very tough. I also think that in the food. I think the reason people get excited about the food business is because you really can do so much with it, and it's so many ideas, and when you like eating this, it's personable. You know what I mean? So, but the ideas don't mean anything. This is in any business, right? Without execution, right? A lot of folks forget about the execution side. Execution is not fun all the time. Execution is when you're in the trenches, and execution is where every day you're getting beat up. Every day. And there's nothing fun about that. So, ideas don't mean anything without execution. And then execution doesn't happen without people. And people don't happen without teams, because you're never going to find someone who's good at everything. Never. Impossible. There may be a few people. My wife is like that. She's pretty good at everything. At least I say that. But it's very hard to find people that are good at everything. Very, very hard. So therefore you got to build teams, and the teams have to complement each other. And you got to make sure that if there's ever any sort of, you have to go with your instincts all the time. My regret, if I look back and sort of see sort of the problems that we've had, I didn't go with my instincts for the first 2 years. I had no experience in this business. So I sort of was like, my instinct is this guy's bad. This guy's stealing, this guy's doing bad things, whatever. I know it, but I don't have the confidence to address it. Why is that? Because I haven't been in this business long enough. I don't really know the stakeholders yet. Maybe they're right. They've done this and this, and they wear chef coats, and they know this, and they talk this and that, and they know more. But my instinct is the guy's a crook, right? So I didn't stop it. I let it go on for 2 years. Other things. There's other stories like that too. Every day. So you have to go with your instincts about people, but always have someone there that's sort of, you have to trust your team, because if you think something and you think it's so much, but your entire team is telling you no, you also can't have an ego, and you can't sort of be 100% sort of disregard what they say. But you also have to know when it is time and be able to stand on your feet and say, I'm sorry, I'm the one making decisions around here. They gotta go. That person's not good. And you have to go. So it's very difficult. So every day you're gonna make good decisions, every day you're gonna make bad decisions, but it's like the theater business, they say the show must go on, and the restaurant business in general, the show must go on. Every day.
Great.
So, yeah.
Okay. Spectacular presentation from Eddie. I have a couple of quick questions, and then we'll open it up to the class. You mentioned stealing. Could you talk a little bit about stealing and theft, employee theft, and maybe customer theft? Just talk a little bit about this to the entrepreneurs, because not everything is hunky-dory. There's a lot of thievery in business.
Talking about, the absolute most ridiculous example of theft is that we had somebody that came in and stole our toilet paper dispenser in one of our restaurants. So you want to talk about employee theft? You get a customer that's going to see a show. A lot of people, they stay in hotels and restaurants and they feel like, hey, I have a privilege to do whatever I want. The craziest thing is you get people that come with their kids and take the knives and just start banging it in your tables. You're like, hey, I paid $2,000 for that table. What are you doing? You know what I mean? But people feel that this is just what people do, right? Take a gun and throw it under desks. It's all this stuff. All this stuff that sort of is just sort of part of daily sort of habits, and you realize this is your property, this is stuff you do. So in some ways people are people, so customers, how do you define theft? I mean, you get a customer that takes a piece of hair, puts it in their food, and they say, hey, I got a hair in my food. I demand that you do something about it. Is that theft, right? Because then if you don't do something about it, then, online reviews, right? All that other bad stuff. So that, it depends on how you want to sort of define
How
theft.
about employee theft?
Employee
How big
theft.
is that?
All right. Employee theft is a big issue. However, it's about culture. And I don't believe that employee theft will happen if people believe in you. If people treat the place like it's theirs every day. When they don't do that, they will steal. Guarantee you. They may steal from each other by stealing tips from each other. They may just take toilet paper home with them. They may take steaks home with them.
That's a real problem, right?
It's a big problem.
Take steaks.
People take steaks. No joking. People come in and they take steaks. And steaks are your most expensive item on the menu. So theft is a huge, huge issue. Now, do you approach theft by setting up a metal detector and having all your sorry employee, I want to search you, where are the steaks? You can do that, but you're not going to have a very, motivated workforce. So it's all about the culture that you build. So people treat your property like it's their property. And actually, I brought here we have 10 values within our sort of modest company, within our 2 restaurants. So one of them is, about basically okay. For a win-win, reduce waste, save the planet, keep us financially healthy. Company property is every team member's property's tool for success. Treat it like it's yours. It's our shared goal to repay our investors so we can grow collectively. So I put that repay our investors in here. A lot of people thought, what do your servers and hourly employees care about repaying your investors? I think it's important, right? Because if we actually are successful, we will take care of them. Everyone will do good. I mean, that's our philosophy. So we want it to be the shared purpose. We're very transparent. Our monthly financial statements that go out, it goes to all of our management team. Anyone can see it in our management team, lower, higher level. We want everyone to know what's going on. A lot of restaurants don't operate like that because a lot of restaurants take out cash. It's a tough business for multiple reasons. We do it all on the books. Why do we do it on the books? Because if you want to grow a company that you want to expand, first of all, it's the right thing to do. So that's why we do it. But also, another reason is that if you want to grow a company that you want to go out and open up like Danny Meyer, if you're not able to show that you've earned income, you can't do that. And how do you show income? Do your tax returns. So you got to show without stealing the cash.
That's good. A couple of questions. This class is running a little late. Who's got a couple of questions? Restaurant questions. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't know where to begin because I have so many questions. But where do you see your business in the future?
Yeah, so I think that right now we're focusing on, when we open one restaurant, we wanted to run it like we had 10. When we open 2 restaurants, we want to run it like we have 100. So right now we've got to be able to run it like we have 100 restaurants, perfectly execution. Once we do that, we're ready to expand, and we'll grow more. I think that in the restaurant business, I'd like to be able to try to raise capital for equity. So in other words, for the actual real estate. It's tough to do that in New York, but I'd like to you put a lot of money into someone else's space. So if you could actually own a piece of the equity, that would be, I feel that at least you're working a little bit for yourself. So I'm thinking about starting a business a separate entity that basically owns the equity, and another business that actually does the management of the restaurants. But it's very hard to find locations that you can do that with.
Okay, last question.
How do you utilize social media to kind of advertise your restaurant?
So we have someone on our team who's responsible for social media. We push it. We are doing all the traditional Facebook, whatever. At Hill and Bay, it's a local restaurant. So it's in Murray Hill. A lot of young people. So we have on the walls. We have follow us at Hill and Bay on our cards, on the customer feedback cards. We were doing contests that servers in a not in a tacky way could if the customers show them that they're following us, we would give them some sort of like dessert or some sort of drink, So we're coming up with incentives to get our customers to follow us on social media, and particularly for a local restaurant where you have young people, it's important. So that's what we're doing for Hill and Bay. For E&E, we've been partnering with the theaters and the theater community and trying to leverage social media to build more of a following. But it's the other thing for social media that's important, and I don't know if this falls under social media, but it's so important that if you run a business, particularly in the food and beverage business, that if anyone writes something about you online, you have to respond to it. We respond to everything. You've got to respond to it. We've had people that have been so upset with us that we've responded and they wrote back and said they're changing their review. Or we've had people that have been so upset with us and so nasty to us, and we know that we were right and they came back and we invited them in. and they have a
Again,
great
kill
time.
them with kindness.
Kill 'em with
That's it,
kindness.
we'll leave it at
You
that.
gotta kill 'em with
All right,
kindness.
thanks very much, Dave. Thank you very much for coming.